Namaste. Thank you for joining this morning, beloved mighty companions. Thank you, Jesus, for bringing us together and teaching us about true creation. And showing me how the diversity of ways in which consciousness can even try to use Jesus's voice for the purpose of keeping personal identity. Wow. For lesson 45, right?
I think they're trying to do the sound one.
What?
It looks like Dial is still working on her sound.
Okay. Sometimes if the sound doesn't work, you almost have to bounce in and out. Are you okay with it, Dyra? Oh, good. Okay. Thank you for translating to the beloveds. I'll mention oh.
Oh, this is not giving you. You on mute? Okay. Can you hear?
Is the teleconference not working?
See?
Oh, it's working?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Oh, just Melissa.
I'm gonna try to recall the teleconferencing because it's not working on.
Okay, we can just wait a moment. It's holy to have our Spanish brothers and sisters with us who speak Spanish. We can just contemplate light. That was a beautiful thing I learned at Sahaja too. You know, if you were standing in line waiting for food or however that appeared, you just contemplate light. Set the dial to infinite. And just have a little cuddle session with Jesus. Okay, we're good to go. Yeah, I was just saying when Dyra couldn't get the translations going, that it was such good training at Monty Sahaja with Muji, because it was always about focusing on light there, starting with the infinite power of being. So if you'd be waiting in line, because the lines could be long, there are a lot of beings that they would feed, 600 or maybe more would come to eat, between 400 and 600, just depending on how many visitors. So contemplate light, I could see that there was like this impatience. And we can only see that we're being impatient with the love that we are. We're being patient with ourselves and rejecting ourselves all the time in the play of consciousness is to reject. That was just helpful. Just to marinate in, I love that Muji says, just marinate. Drop all ideas and marinate as that. And in this, what's here becomes self-evident. It's always evident. But it's lesson 44 is the opportunity to revelatory experience. For light of being to just reveal itself, because it's self-evident. When we just drop the noise and the think I knows and the what ifs and when and why am I not awake yet and how can I awaken faster? Renee came in and was sharing her talks with Jesus. She's been typing them. And it reminded me that around in February, March, when the book was coming in, I was spending time typing. In addition to the book, I was having conversations with Jesus. And he's saying, this is so helpful. You just ask him a question and you type the answer. And I can remember typing, and this feels weird. And he goes, only to the wrong mind. I might share those notes. It was hilarious. You can see how he's coaching me, just like he's doing in the one-on-one sessions for chapter 20. In fact, today at 2, the chapter 20, thanks to the blessed angels of Dyra and Melissa, it's so touching in the heart, and Lena, who devoted their hearts to listening to Jesus and be guided by him to translate chapter 20. So that it can be extended to our beloved mighty companions. And then today we'll talk and have a Spanish translation of how to work with Jesus on chapter 20. That's at 2. And then, of course, our mighty companions that are working on chapter 20 are invited to come to share their experience, how Jesus is guiding them. So it supports the whole. And also we'll have beings who will be available to help you, like Dyra and Lena, to get started in this speaking to Jesus and how to look at all these desires with him. And when I was going through my notes, I noticed how many things that I looked at Jesus with, like headaches and nausea and, and that's what we do. We just keep looking. You'll see it. It's all there. I'm going to put that up on the chapter 20. And you'll see how much it really is just like the conversation with Helen. But he's really emphasizing, there's so much love coming in saying this, that everyone can talk to him just like Helen now. He says there's not as much fear about it. Helen was kind of fascinated by it. So that opens up the door if you kind of get really in the curiosity. And going through this chapter 20, And I asked him, is it helpful to go through twice? For some beings, yes, it's very helpful, because you'll see at first there's not quite as much openness for him going deep, to go all the way down for each one to the death wish, to see how heaven and hell is flipped. That's really what you can see when you carefully go through the desires with him. And then he'll show you, to ask him to show you, okay, I want to see where I flipped this, Jesus, where I made this desire heaven when it's really hell. And just even, it's been so helpful just seeing in the experience and just following him on extending through chapter 20 and bringing partners together, and then seeing the play in consciousness of just not even wanting to just find the diversity of ways not to look, or to avoid looking at chapter 20. It's very robust. It's very rich. When you start looking, if a resistance comes up there, because it's just a conversation with Jesus, and it just reflects how consciousness plays to reject Jesus. And then you'll notice it'll kind of come and go. It'll be like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then it'll be, you know, oh my goodness, this is the light circles. They're wonderful. And then it'll go into a cycle of just hating. You know, like if I never hear a light circle again, or if I never look at chapter, you know, because that's how consciousness plays, to embrace and then reject, and it'll be the worst thing. You know, everything they're doing is wrong. And Jesus says it's wrong. See, he doesn't say things are wrong. He just says, look with me in another way. That's how you can start to tell. So we don't judge it if it appears, but we just go to Jesus, so that we're always super duper clear and lined up with him in the interpretation of everything. Rejection is the ego's prized possession. It loves to jump on a little bandwagon. And okay, this is it. This is going to be it. This is wonderful. This is for me. And that can be helpful. Jesus can use that. But you just see that ping as you start getting close to really seeing the denial. As we've said, you'll suddenly find yourself really just like, oh, don't want to get close to anyone, anything. You want to go off by yourself. That's a clue. That's a clue. Won't want to join, won't want to talk to anyone. It'll be like that. That's a clue. See, we can use those things now. That's the time to really step forward to the joining, Jesus says. As soon as you want to go off by yourself, jump and come forward. That'll break that pattern. And to reject the assignments by Jesus. He'll give you an assignment, and then all of a sudden, I just can't look at this. Is just real, you know, and you just hear the complaints coming. Then you know for sure it's for you to look. As soon as the complaints start coming, that's when you know time to look. Just let it be the signal. But usually we follow it. You know, the complaints come, and this is so bad, and I can't do this anymore. And then it shuts down. See, we go into this little shutdown mode. And then the distractions will start coming. Like I say, Jesus is always with us. There isn't a time he isn't. There isn't a place he isn't. It's just how the plane consciousness starts to work to deny light. It'll do that delay thing. It'll say, okay, well, Jesus is with me always. and he's with me everywhere I go. But even the ego, ask Jesus, will the ego use that not to talk to you or listen and follow guidance? Of course, he's always with us, but we'll feel guilty. See, we'll just be denying ourselves and we feel guilty. And then it'll be the play of guilt. And then because of the guilt, then it's going to attack to protect that little place, that little piece of identity that we don't want to look at. So it's just, we go deeper. It's a dive into the despair, pretending like, okay, this will be heaven for me. If I go into the despair, if I go into that's how backwards, upside down backwards is the belief system. So we thank Jesus for helping to reverse it and show us. And that's a good question. Where do I have this flipped? But again, it was just really helpful in the text, and he's reminding me again to have that one-on-one talk with him, like to start, so you can see how clearly you can just write his words too. And you probably have for a long time, longer than you realize. Because he had been talking to me about light. All I could think of was light. And I had a reflection. Someone said to me, don't think about the light. Well, then I got mad over that because all I could think about was light. And, but then that's just was a play in consciousness to delay listening to the light. See, it's very, the ego wants to even their own light in the concept of light. So we really, Jesus, we're going to put down all concepts of light today. Give it to you. I'm giving it over to you. And all concepts of not wanting to be light. Because there can only be a concept not to be light. But still, there's a lot of energetic investment in that. You'll see it as it starts to rise, and you're looking at the desires. We were talking about that. It's sort of like this little energetic release from inside. You come, and then you can just yawn it out. We call this just the yawning group, is the beingness. We start to relax as who we are, and it's just, you know, like it's interesting that in society, when you yawn, it's considered rude. Isn't that interesting? When really the being is just relaxing, it's releasing the subconscious tension. You can ask Jesus, is that release? Because it's not natural to have tension. Tension's very unnatural. So then consciousness plays to make the most natural thing, which is not to hold on to tension. It makes it rude or except obviously that was a desired experience. Jesus, did I desire that experience? Yes. To deny myself, to design myself. Okay. Thank you for telling me, showing me. Yeah, so I was going through the notes, and it's really helpful too when you have them written. It's like doing the videos of the joining sessions or the audios, because then we can go back and see them and look at them and really hear that level of clarity with Jesus. And to really take those thoughts out and just, okay, interpret this for me, and just going through, interpret this one. How about this one? What about this pain? Will you interpret it? And you just see, he just comes in, he just interprets. Okay, look at it this way. It was hilarious. Renee and I were looking at the notes. And I said, Jesus, do I need to be reminded of this? He says, yes. So obviously I do. So anyway, so I was typing in the notes, and there was just something about Helen. I'll ask him if he'll tell me. What was it about Helen? You know, so he took Helen out for a coat. I think I was kind of mad because when are you taking me out for a coat, Jesus? You know, so he helped Helen go buy a coat, and it was a better coat than she could ever buy. And I was doing like a little comparison play in consciousness, well, I think it was, yeah, it was. He's telling me. It was like a, what about me, Jesus? That's how conscious was. Well, when are you going to help me out? Sort of thing. And he was really direct. Like, it's like, he says, you're trying to get false empathy. Like, no. It was just that you don't have something that you have, or he'll remind me like, you're trying to speed up something that never happened. You're in there doing, and he'd tell me that you're trying to speed it up when it's not, nothing's happening. So you can have like a little laugh session with Jesus when you type those notes and see how he really is willing to answer every question. And it's with that practicing, it's like beings ask me, because it must be helpful for me because they're asking me, but how did that come about? Well, it just was fostered. Like, that's all he's saying. We just foster it and just be open to it. And you nurture it as our true voice, accept it as the true voice. And we go in like little 2-year-olds, really, like with perfect innocence, going, okay, I don't know. And you are going to have to tell me, because if there's one little chip on the shoulder with it, you will get what he says wrong. He says, yes, one little chip on the shoulder. I think I know, you won't be able to hear him clearly. He says, yes, you have to be totally like yourself, which is naked to everything. It won't be clear. You have to drop all the ideas of what it sounds like and what Jesus sounds like and what your natural voice sounds like. And that's what he's saying, is like, drop all that. Because as soon as you start worrying about it, like if I were to start worrying, and I could see some of that play when I was talking at first, it's like, oh, we know the play, because whenever we're talking, we're trying to edit and go, okay, did I get that right, Jesus? He says, just check in with me. I'll tell you if you get it right, if you're really on point with what I'm telling you. That's why you see me check in with him so much. Like, is that what you want to say, Jesus? Okay, is this, because it really focuses on the mind, on infinite. Or do I tell that story, Jesus? And it's just a symbol of the kind of relationship we are developing with ourselves as infinite light beings. And you can go back to when you have those notes and look at them and see, he's been really helping me all along, even though I didn't want to admit it. And again, he's reminding me about how important the following is. And I can see that too. Like that, and he's reminding me about that time, like when he showed me the light in my hands, and he had to make it blue because that's what the mind could relate to at the time. Because light, infinite light, we can see it doesn't have a color to it. There's no color in infinite light. But because I could only process kind of a color, because we're so used to looking at colors and shapes and sounds. And, he can only try to teach us where we are. And for me, that's where I was in terms of, okay, now I understood the light, and I could understand that there were, through the desire to hide and not see that that was an infinite light and that was myself, because that's the last thing. You just see, no, do I want to be the son of God 1 iota? You can ask them, and just start seeing, no, I absolutely do not want to be the son of God. But to have that light, and so he communicated in a way that I could understand, and it was blue. But it was teaching to focus on light first. But then just think about it in the world of form. Okay, you walk into a coaching session and it's you, and you walk into prison and you're sitting across from this guy that's this big guy comes in with a lot of muscles, and he's sitting there. And it's very touching. I was just telling someone this story the other day when I sat down with Roger, because he was really upset about being in prison for 30 years. Now, if Jesus isn't trying to communicate something to me with that little metaphor, talking about why am I still in prison? And so I said, okay, so Roger, just going to close our eyes for a little minute here. And, and then, before I was going to extend my hands with the light, because I think I had to prepare, because it's like, doesn't seem like a normal thing where you're going to put your hands out and ask someone like, okay, now just cup your hands with me and put this in the light. I think I was getting myself ready. So it's just like, am I hearing that right? You're still kind of learning if you hear it. But here's what happened. So Roger's sitting there, and all of a sudden his eye cracks open. He gives me like this little sideways look when his eyes are closed, and he goes, "You're not going to hit me, are you?" Like, I almost started crying. Like, here's this guy, he's all in shape. I mean, they're in great shape. They're working out like for hours in that prison. And it just put me to tears. Like, you're not going to hit me. After 30 years in prison now, in a tough environment, and he asked me that. Like, wow. But to extend, go ahead and put your hands out and go, okay, now here's the light we share. And he's saying, oh, that's okay. So he's teaching me that's how we feel about everything, that extension, like really putting our hands out and putting ourselves on the line and offering light. We're so afraid of just really putting ourselves on the line and offering light, only the light of who we are. Thank you, Jesus. It's been a good lesson today. He said, but we have to put our hands out. You have to be willing. But then at the time and space, he's really reminding me of putting ourselves on the line before we know what anything's for. And he's bringing to mind also that time that, this must be for me again, here it comes, that there were two guys that I had coached. They had been in the class, the 6 weeks class before. And then we were interviewing the men about, okay, how was the class for you? And we were taping it. And they both came up to me, and I was asking, okay, how's the class? And I asked them, okay, now what are you in here for? And they both said something like, well, somebody died. I was with them and they died. And, just kind of the coach's instinct, like, wait, something's not, I didn't know what it was. I didn't see that it was for me to look at the idea of killing. Like, it was such a gift, but boy, it was like mind blowing. But I could feel the energy, and I knew somehow it's like I was to go in and coach. And I'm thinking, who am I? Like, I'm, it's like, I'm not the one to go in and talk about killing, but it was for me to look so deeply at the idea that one body can kill another. And so I called my friend Don, who had been coaching for many years in the prison, and I said, who am I to do this? And he goes, you can do it, go. It's like, oh my God. So in the first place, it's miraculous, because in a prison, they don't just let you in and go in and coach. I mean, that was the whole thing. That had to be orchestrated by Jesus. You're just like somebody from the outside, you're going to go in and coach. But I had a relationship with them. And so I just called the prison, and they called them down, both of them down for a coaching session back to back. And so I got my car, and I'm crying. I mean, I was just like bawling, help me God, driving on the backcountry roads of Wisconsin, driving to that prison. And there's so much love in this now. See how it was so cleared so purposeful, but you can't see it at the time, because sometimes when you're going to be doing something that you know that you need to follow through on, you can't know why, and you're going to cry. Yes, it's just, you know, you don't see it's really the most helpful, but it's this, you know, it's, I think this was well before this light thing, actually. Jesus saying it was like preparing my mind to hear from him on this, actually, just to go and just like be, that was like, it put you right in the moment, because you got to be in absolute faith right in that moment, you know, because you're going into that, you know, and then you get in between those two doors like you see in the movie, and you hear the first one, you know, it opens the first one and it clangs, and you're between, you know, what symbols in the mind like this, you know, and then I get in a little cart and they drive me to the back to go in there. You know, he's just reminding me, step out, you know, because it was such a warped thing. You know, who am I to go on to talk about death, and, you know, and even thinking about a body killing another body, until Jesus shows you that you're trying to kill bodies all the time in your mind, you know, you're just killing them off and booting them out and trying to get rid of your brother. I mean, I didn't see I was trying to kill myself and everybody else all the time, you know, but this is where the mine was. So then I just went in prayer. I really didn't feel like I knew God that well, you know, but you start getting to know God really fast. When you're in there going, holy shit, what am I going to say, literally? And the first man comes in, you know, and I just said, I really went to nothing, I have to say, because I was just speechless. And, you know, and to have that, he's teaching me about courage, really, in holy purpose, to just let the words come out about, you know, if there was something that I thought possibly that didn't feel quite right in our conversation, like, and would he be willing to talk about it? And he said, I'll talk about anything that you want to talk about. And we proceeded, and it was all about forgiveness, like the whole thing, just looking at the beliefs for both of them. It was so, I can't even remember the conversation. I was just so struck by Jesus. Okay, Jesus was telling me, he was showing me that we can talk about anything. There's nothing that can't be, because everything's innocence. He was teaching me about innocence. He was teaching me to trust my brother. I mean, there's so many lessons that were learned. I mean, he was teaching me about him handling time and space. He was teaching me about willingness and how beliefs were driving behavior, because then we talked about, okay, so what belief makes it okay to kill? And one of the guys said, well, I felt that was the only way. And if we really believe that it's the only way, killing is the only way, see, if salvation is in killing, then we're just, that's how the expression's going to look. You know, and for each being, he's giving us the stepping stones, and you are going to cry sometimes. That's, he says, yes. And I know I cried plenty, but you're fine. See, until we really step that far out into the stretch, we can't have these. He can't help us, show us where we need to cleansing, the purification. God is the mind with which I think. So yeah, he's reminding me we can study these lessons, and it's great to really look, but he's just reminding me, step out. That was one of the greatest, most powerful gifts ever. Really. It opened the mind to so much more, to love that's here, obviously. Today's idea holds the key to what your real thoughts are. They are nothing that you think you think. Just as nothing that you think you see is related to vision in any way. There's no relationship between what is real and what you think is real. Nothing that you think or your real thoughts resemble your real thoughts in any respect. So Jesus, we need you to show us what our real thoughts are. That feels like valuable to ask them what our real thoughts are. Can you show us what our real thoughts are? Real thoughts are infinite. Infinite. Without limit. Nothing that you think you see bears any resemblance to what vision will show you. You think with the mind of God. Therefore, you share your thoughts with him as he shares his with you. He can only share infinite. Jesus says, yes, God can only share infinite because that's all that can be shared is infinite. They are the same thoughts because they are thought by the same mind. Love is sameness. Infinite love is sameness. To share is to make alike or to make one. Aw, two minds perceive their oneness and become glad. That's what he's given us. He wrapped it in a little package called chapter 20. Look together and you see, and the beings are reporting that. How they're just seeing, wait a minute, I'm just seeing there's no other. It's just one. We're just like one together. To share is to make alike or to make one. Oh, yeah, that's so great to be reminded because there's an idea in consciousness that sharing is when we open our mouths and say one thought and it comes out, and then another thought comes from seemingly another mouth. And then we agree, and that's share. We're already sharing because we are. Identity, the only thing we can share is true identity, which is light. Thank you, Jesus, for that reminder. Nor do the thoughts you think with the mind of God leave your mind because thoughts do not leave their source. That's the play of consciousness, to pretend like thoughts just got flung out into the universe and that is outside of God. Jesus says, yes, because thoughts do not leave their source. Therefore, your thoughts are in the mind of God as you are. He says you just like false thoughts. They are in your mind as well, where he is. As you are part of his mind, so are your thoughts part of his mind. Oh my God, he's just reminding me. When I walked into the room with those men, I thought I was going to walk into hell, but what I really walked into was heaven. That's when we're open. See, we're so sure we're going to walk into hell doing chapter 20, but you're going to see you're walking into heaven because we have it so reversed. See, I had it so reversed. The play, that was the play. You think you're going to be shredded and killed because you're going in there. But you see, I walked into heaven that day. He says, yes, that's very humbling. That's the decision to walk in heaven. See, that was walking outside the idea of a personal identity to serve the whole. And then we're always in heaven when we're serving the whole, because we're serving totality, ourselves as we are wholly whole and complete. They are in your mind as well, where he is. As you are part of his mind, so are your thoughts part of his mind. The infinite mind. Where then are your real thoughts? Today we will attempt to reach them. Yes, that sounds great. We will have to look for them in your mind because that is where they are. They must still be there because they cannot have left their source. What is thought by the mind of God is eternal. Aw, See, it's eternal. Feel that. Feel the eternity. Feel the real, as Lori says. But it's beyond feeling. It's a recognition. It's a recognition of infinite. What is thought by the mind of God is eternal, being part of creation. It's a celebration of creation. Thoughts of God celebrate creation. Our 3 5-minute practice periods for today will take the same general form that we used in applying yesterday's idea. We will attempt to leave the unreal and seek for the real. We will deny the world in favor of truth. We will not let the thoughts of the world hold us back. We will not let the beliefs the world tell us that what God would have us do is impossible. See, that's the play of consciousness. To tell us what God would have us do is impossible. Ask Jesus that. Instead, we will try to recognize that only what God would have us do is possible. Jesus, am I willing to see that only what God would have us do is possible? God would have us see what we are now. That it's possible. Boy, yeah, he's reminding me that it's possible to see this now. That's what God would have us do. See that there's no doer. That there's no one to do. We will also try to understand that not only what God would have us do is what we want to do. That only what God is what we want to do. Is that true, Jesus? See, let that sing. And we will also try to remember that we cannot fail in doing what he would have us do. That's why he's reminded me of a prison, going into that prison, so I can remember that. That was God's will for me, for perfect happiness. There is every reason to feel confident that we will succeed today. It is the will of God. Begin the exercises for today by repeating the idea to yourself. Closing your eyes as you do so. Then spend a fairly short period in thinking a few relevant thoughts of your own, keeping the idea in mind. After you had added some 4 or 5 thoughts of your own to the idea, repeat it again and tell yourself gently, my real thoughts are in my mind. I would like to find them. Then try to go past all the unreal thoughts that cover the truth in your mind and reach the eternal. Under all the senseless thoughts and mad ideas which you have cluttered up your mind are the thoughts that you thought with God in the beginning. Infinite. Are there in your mind now, completely unchanged. They will always be in your mind exactly as they always are. Everything you have thought since then will change, but the foundation on which it rests is wholly changeless. It is this foundation toward which exercises for today are directed. Here's your mind joined with the mind of God. Here are your thoughts one with his. For this kind of practice, only one thing is necessary. Approach it as you would an altar dedicated in heaven to God the Father and to God the Son. For such is the place you are trying to reach. You will probably be unable as yet to realize how high you are trying to go. Yet even with little understanding you have already gained, you should be able to remind yourself that this is no idle game, but an exercise in holiness and an attempt to reach the kingdom of heaven. In the shorter practice periods for today, try to remember how important it is to you to understand the holiness of the mind that thinks with God. Take a minute or two as you repeat the idea throughout the day to appreciate your mind's holiness. Thank you, Jesus, for reminding us. Stand aside, however, briefly from all thoughts that are unworthy of him whose host you are, and thank him for the thoughts he is thinking with you. So we'll sit for a few moments with these thoughts of God in celebration of God and each other. And I know that Dyer may need to step out. She has an appointment this morning. And if she does, we'll just use the little translator to complete the lesson. So we'll just spend a few moments. To let the song of God sing in our hearts. God is the mind which I think. Jesus, thank you for showing us our true thoughts, thoughts of gratitude, because we are gratitude itself. That's all love is. It's just gratitude, singing and singing to itself infinitely, because it is like a little cricket that just sings. So with that singing, we're going to invite beloved Lori to come up and continue our pointing up to the thoughts of God in our hearts. And for teaching, and we thank Lori for teaching us about when we really follow, we can be very spontaneous. She wrote that song yesterday right in the meditation. It's really beautiful. Go ahead. We'll just mute it a second while we get set up.
This is called Walk into Heaven. Walk into heaven. Walk into heaven. Walk into heaven. Ooh, show me my real thoughts. Show me my real thoughts. Show me real thoughts. Show me real thoughts. Show me real thoughts. Ooh, show me likeness. Show me likeness. Show me likeness. Show me likeness. Ooh, show me oneness. Show me oneness. Show me oneness. Show me oneness. Ooh, oh Ramana. Oh Ramana, oh Muji. Oh Muji, oh Jesus. Oh Jesus, oh Holy Father. Oh Holy Father, oh Holy Hill. Oh Holy Hill, oh Sahaja. Oh Sahaja, oh Jesus. Oh Jesus, oh shared thoughts. Oh shared thoughts. Walk into heaven. Walk into heaven. Walk into heaven. Ooh. Ooh. Show me real thoughts. Show me real thoughts. Show me real thoughts. Ooh, hallelujah. 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 Ooh.
Gracias. Thank you, Jesus, for showing us the thoughts of God. And thank you, Lori, for helping us sing the thoughts of God. We love you.